that. Is always higher and higher and higher. It never ends. But there are certain landmarks, certain mileposts on the path that are very significant. One is when you get the association of an actual self-realized soul. Another one is when you accept initiation. A third one is when you actually get rid of the desire for nonsense material activities. And yet another one is when you begin to feel transcendental bliss, spiritual happiness. These are mileposts. And the ultimate milepost is when we see the personality of Godhead face to face. Krishna Darshan. When we get Krishna Darshan, then we know, okay, I made it. It's all downhill. It's easy from that point on. It's easy because now we don't have to worry about becoming more and more pure. Now all we have to worry about is implementing what we've learned, what we've realized. And that's easy. Compared with attaining purification, it's actually quite easy. So once one attains Krishna Darshan and we're recognized by Krishna as his servant, then we don't, after that we don't have to worry so much. Up until then, there's always a danger of falling down. And yes, that's a very high goal. It's the highest goal. So we should shoot for that. Then, even if we attain something less, it's still going to be very worthwhile. You know? Prabhupada always used the example of, if you're going to go hunting, hunt for the rhinoceros. But even if you miss and get trampled into a little puddle on the ground, people will say, well, he tried his best. So, yeah, aim for the rhinoceros. Go for the highest. And then if you hit it, wow, bingo. More questions?
Yes. Neville says, I have another question about consciousness, which may sound silly. How is it possible that consciousness can be covered by matter?
Because we want it. The confusion is that we start to identify with the object of consciousness instead of consciousness itself. The soul is conscious. And you can also say that the soul is consciousness, because the soul is nothing but Brahman, right? So, if we are consciousness, then why do we start to think I am this body, or I am some bodily designation, like I am a financial analyst, I'm an American, I'm a man, I'm this, I'm that. Why do we think like that? Because we're in identification with the body, its activities, and its designations. The bodily extensions like our possessions, family members, and so on. This is called identification. But this is a disease. This is a diseased condition of the soul when we identify with something that we're not. It's called illusion. Illusion, the word for a Sanskrit word is maya, which means that which is not. That which does not exist. Maya. So, when we are in maya, we think that I am something other than consciousness. Actually, we're just little atoms of consciousness, floating around the Lord's lotus feet. But because we misidentify with the creations in the material world, then that's how our real knowledge gets covered over. We do it to ourselves by our projection, by our identification, by our accepting these designations as being ourself. This is always a mistake. It's always wrong, because these material designations can never be the self. It doesn't really make any sense to say, I am a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker, an Indian chief, or whatever. Huh? That doesn't make sense, because the I is a conscious entity, means spiritual entity. And all these other things are material, because they're defined in reference to the material energy. So as soon as you say, I am something material, this is nonsense. Huh? Those are not equivalent ontological terms. Now when we start to say, I am consciousness, or I am spirit soul, or even I am Brahman, I am pure spirit. See, now we're starting to make some sense, because the two terms on each side of the identity are a similar quality. You see, if I try to make an equation that the square root of x equals pineapples, this doesn't make any sense. It can't make any sense. The square root of x is supposed to be a number, and here I am talking about pineapples. Well, if I say, I am an American, that's the same nonsense. Because I means a spirit soul, and an American is some material designation. So it's actually a form of insanity. It's actually a form of insanity to think that I am anything in this material world. So it's like we're actually living in a madhouse. We're living in a madhouse where everybody's nuts, right? With a cuckoo's nest. And here we are trying to talk some sense into people. What a thankless task. But yeah, that's how it happens.
Okay, so the soul is not actually in matter. Just like a person playing a video game thinks he's a character in the middle of some video game, but actually he's outside of it. Right. Is that a correct understanding? So actually we aren't really in matter in terms of localization or whatever?
No, matter doesn't even really exist because it's temporary. What does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita 2:16? Huh? It's my favorite verse. He says, that which is temporary does not really exist. The sages, the seers have said, have observed that only that which is eternal is real. Just like when we wake up in the morning after dreaming, we say, oh, that dream is not real. Well, why do we say the dream isn't real? Because it didn't persist. It doesn't continue to exist. When we're in the dream, we think, oh yes, this is real, this is happening. Then when we wake up, we say, oh no, that dream wasn't real. Because it doesn't persist. It's temporary. Similarly, everything in this material world is temporary. Has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Therefore, it doesn't really exist. Its existence is relative, not absolute. But the soul, the self, the I, consciousness, is real because that consciousness is eternal. By the way, that's another sutra, I think in the 3rd Adhyaya. Well, I can hardly wait till I get to some of these This is going to be so much fun. I'm really having a blast looking into Vedanta, by the way. I'm just having a great time. Anyway, all these things that we hear Srila Prabhupada say about the soul and so on like that, these are all from Vedanta. Vedanta is really the key. It's like the junction between the material and spiritual conception of life. You know, it's like the very definition of what is real and what is unreal, or what is spiritual and what is material, what is temporary and what is eternal. It's all there in the Vedanta. So even though the first part of the Vedanta kind of plods along, maybe as soon as you get to the third adhyaya, it really takes off. So I'm looking forward to going all through that with you all. So yeah, we're not really